This is Nursing Uncensored. I'm your host, Adrianne Benning, and I invite you to listen in on conversations I've had with real nurses about the crazy and wonderful lives we lead. This podcast is meant to create laughter in addition to serious discussion, and nothing is off limits. We're always honest, but we're not always safe for work. Please listen responsibly. Welcome to Nursing Uncensored. It's me, Adrianne, here today with Blake. We're talking CVICU today. All CVICU all day long, right? Welcome, Blake.
Hey, it's great to be here. One thing I have to say about CVICU nurses is we're better than every other nurse out there. So it's very important to get that in your head right now. No, I'm just playing. So,
I joke around about that. What did I say? I told a joke that was like, how can you identify a CVICU nurse? Oh, don't worry. They'll tell you. No, I love my CVICU nurses. As a nursing assistant, I used to float to the CVICU just to kind of help with environmental stuff and whatever they needed. It intimidated the shit out of me. So I have mad respect for all ICU nurses, but I just renewed my ACLS and I got mad respect for you cardiovascular nurses. So here's the other interesting thing. So we connected over social media and decided we wanted to chat, but I know virtually nothing about you. So you're like the man of mystery coming on to the show. Yeah, so I would love it. Tell us more.
All right. So my name's Blake. I work in the CBSU. So I started there about a year and a half ago as a new grad. I got lucky and persuaded the management to let me on. And it was tough, but I was able to, pick up the flow and start going. And now that I have worked in the CBSU, anytime I get pulled to any other unit, I'm just unhappy. Like anytime I get pulled to CCU or to the COVID ICU or to the step down unit, I'm just like, well, let me go back home. I'm ready to go back home. I'm not used to patients that can talk to me and eat.
Yeah, that's really different because you're working with. So what level of care are we talking about here?
It's a lot of post-surgical patients. So they might have a CABG or heart surgery, or they might have vascular procedures done. And most of our vascular cases come out fine. They're not intubated or anything like that. And they usually leave the next day unless they're like an open AAA where their abdomen will be split open and all that. But the heart surgical patients, they usually come out intubated. They come out with lots of lines hooked up to them, lots of monitoring, lots of numbers. And the goal is for them to get the tube out 4 to 6 hours after their surgery. But we've had some sick ones lately. And, when they do come out and they're not able to extubate 4 to 6 hours, hopefully they can get the tube out the next morning. But sometimes we don't. But usually once our patients start getting better and they can talk, they can get up to the chair, we try to push them to the step down unit so we can take more surgeries.
And I'm in step down. So that's the level of patient that I'm used to seeing. Like we're past the point of needing any intubation. They're mostly awake. They're stable. And then they can come to us to free you guys up for the next either post-surgical patient or arrest or whatever the case may be. I work with a lot of lung transplant patients. And so in our hospital, our lung transplant patients go to CV mainly because we want to really make sure that, we're in there messing around, moving the heart around and stuff. So they come out of CV. So I see a lot of patients. I talk to a lot of CV nurses. So that's really interesting. You see a lot of crazy stuff. CABGs alone, when I learned about what a CABG was, where they basically cut apart vessels and repatch things to route around clogged arteries. That's as much as I know. That's as nuanced as I get with the heart stuff. But
yeah, and me as being a CVICU nurse, I've gotten a ton of certifications saying that I know exactly what happens and how they can get the arteries from
me.
They can get it from the internal mammary artery, they can get it from the saphenous vein, they can get it from the radial artery. But if they do, it's high chance of vasospasm. No, I'm just being silly.
This is good because here's the thing. I know there are people listening that are like, yes, tell me more, that want to be in CV because it is such an exciting specialty of practice. I was super excited that this year during ACLS, I knew all the rhythms. I got every rhythm right. I've mastered my blocks. I'm a little iffy with junction. Sometimes seeing a junctional, I'm not confident. But
is
this
it just
was
Brady?
Yeah. But this was the first year that I was like, that's a winky buck.
Mm-hmm. Is this your second time getting ACLS or third time?
The first time was just like deer in headlights. What did I do? What am I expected to do?
Just let me through.
Yeah. The second time it was like, okay, this is uncomfortable. Plus when we did pre-COVID, my last certification pre-COVID, we did, we go around room to room in our education center and we run codes. And I happened to be in a group that had like 5 male ICU nurses that were all over 6 feet tall, and I'm 5'2", and I'm not an ICU nurse. And I was just like terrified, but they were really nice and they helped me through everything. And I felt like I learned a lot. This time I walked in and I was like, I studied. I'm dangerous. I know. It's epi this time. I know it's epi. So,
epi's a good go-to.
Epi's a pretty good thing, but like, a little bit more nuance this year. So don't ask me, don't quiz me.
No, I'm not going to quiz you.
but yeah, that was this year was my first victory where I was like, I actually kind of fucking understand what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. So, and good thing for my patients too.
Yeah. I just renewed for my ACLS this past, probably in October. And when I was getting my ACLS, I was like, might as well go to get my PALS too, even though we never use it. Yeah, I got it. That was way easier than ACLS because you don't have the simulations. You just take about 2 hours worth of questions when you get one wrong. It like teaches you what you did wrong. Yeah, but I decided to get that, even though I doubt I'll ever want to do a code on a baby, especially not in the next few years.
God, I can't even imagine. Yep. But you know what? Any knowledge is power. I think that learning for the sake of learning is okay. So even if it's not something you're going to use, and as nurses, we don't know what the future is going to hold for us. So the specialties that some people end up in, they're like, I never in a million years would have guessed that this would be like, I never intended on being in pulmonary or palliative care. And now I viciously love both. But when I started out, I was like, I'm going to be a mother baby nurse. And then I was like, I don't really want to do that. So you never know. You might becoming an instructor could be, there's so many different options.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to get in CRNA school now.
Sweet. Yeah. So I had a really great CRNA episode. I don't know if you've heard it or not, but she also wrote.
I've only listened to the one with the president from the university.
Nice. So go back and look at the blog. Anyone who's interested in CRNA school, this, I'm totally blanking on her name. I'll put it on the screen and give her my apologies because Jenny Finnell. That's who it was. My episode with Jenny Finnell. She actually wrote a guest blog post about how to make yourself a competitive candidate for CRNA school. And it's gotten tons of hits on the web. So you should go look at that because she gives some great advice. Mm-hmm. I know nothing about CRNA school, which is why I left it to her to lay it all down. So I'll put the link for that in the show notes, but that's a great goal to have. So, and you're working your way, you said what, like a year and a half in CVICU?
I've only been a nurse for a year and a half. So that's
still so much you learn in a year and a half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do feel like I'm at the bottom of the ladder though, trying to get into CRNA school because a lot of CRNA schools don't want someone that only has a year and a half experience. They want someone that has 3, 4, 5 years. That's one reason why I've been working so hard getting my certifications. Just so I could prove like I've only been a nurse for a year and a half, but look at all that I have.
Yeah.
You're talking about lung transplant patients. We don't do that at my hospital, but when I was a student nurse doing my 5th semester preceptorship, I was in a heart and lung transplant unit, and that was a pretty cool unit to be in for 180 hours. There's some sad stories. A lot of kids whose lungs were like already so fibrous that they were stuck to the walls of the cavity. Yeah. Lots of stuff like that. But that's one thing about nursing is there's a lot of sad things. That's why we have to cope with shitty humor and being toxic sometimes just for the fun of it, see how people react to saying certain funny things. It's true.
Like, and I've got like my humor on this show doesn't even get as dark and twisted as it gets. And it is a huge coping mechanism. And I've been fighting for that. I remember to always keep the humanity in my patients at the forefront, but like sometimes a fucking joke is what you need. Like you just need to laugh. And often I find that we laugh more at situations than at actual people, because we do care about the people. We wouldn't go through all of this if we didn't care about people. But yeah, sometimes like last night, I wasn't a part of this. I'm so pissed, but we've been doing the elf on a shelf on my unit. We've had some designated people like moving around the elf from shift to shift. And last night they posted a video. They had like a Christmas ornament and this elf, and it was like Miley Cyrus wrecking ball style but they had made, the elf had his little red suit on. So I mean,
that's just like a bodysuit.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what everybody thinks of when they think of Miley on the wrecking ball. But yeah, they had made like a brick wall that came busting through. Like, it was a production. I was like, man, you guys must have had some downtime last night. But you've got to have those moments of like, you just got to laugh for a second.
Especially on night shift. So I worked night shift the first year I was a nurse, and I just moved to day shift in the summertime. But on night shift, I find myself laughing all the time, and I never laugh anymore when I'm on day shift. Like, we don't have time. We got to, push them out, get surgeries, push everyone, keep it going. But at night shift, like I did a night shift back in October when I haven't done one in 4 months, and I found myself laughing again. I was like, do I need to go back to nights? Am I a better person?
It's true. I think there's just a different kind of personality on nights. And it's true that the night and days are different and very hard in different ways. But on night shift, you do kind of have you're not sending people off to procedure after procedure. You're maybe not admitting as often, even though on my unit, we still admit at night. But even with my patients, I get to joke around. The last patient that I admitted for lung transplant, getting him ready for the OR, getting IVs, getting all the, EKG, chest x-ray, getting everything done that night. And he had his son and daughter with him. And I felt like I was doing stand-up comedy. Like, we were laughing. I had them rolling. They were joking around with me. It was great. And it was a great energy to send him off to surgery in, because you think about how scared, anxious people get, the worry, not being able to sleep. Like, I feel like that really set a good mood for him. So it's not just joking around with each other. It's having that freedom. You got to read the room. You got to know when they're not interested.
Yeah.
But if you've got the right situation, you got to roll with it, because that's medicine too. For us,
medicine does help when they're not laughing. Push a little bit more morphine, give them some Restoril. For sure. Just to help our bodies when they're not able to. The patients need it.
Yeah, for sure.
For anyone that's listening that's a nurse, they understand. For anyone listening that's a nursing student, they'll understand soon.
Soon, you'll get it. If I'm ever in the hospital, I want my advance directive to just say, I'm cool with the morphine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, give me some Dilaudid.
Yeah.
I'm going to be such a pain too. I'm going to be extubating myself. I'm going to be pulling my IVs out.
So the other day I was trying to nap before work, and I kept just remembering things I had to do and like getting out of bed for no reason. And I was like, someday some nursing assistant is going to hate my ass, because I'm going to be like 3:00 in the morning. I'm going to be like, all right, I got to go. And they're going to be like, you're in the hospital. I have an advance directive, and I put in my advance directive.
You do have one.
I do have one. And I think anyone 18 and older should have one. I think if you're capable of making your own legal decisions, you should have a piece of paper that says what happens and who gets to make your decisions. Because, we assume next of kin is going to be, I don't want my mom making those decisions. I want my mom to be able to focus on me and being with me. I don't want my mom thinking about, well, what did we talk about 10 years ago? What did she say? So I put in my advance directive, it has notes like, I am a prone sleeper. I've been a prone sleeper my whole life. It's basically like, good fucking luck, nurses. If you have to intubate me, I'm going to be trying to roll over on my stomach. So stuff like that. Good
if you have COVID though.
For sure. For sure. Just self-pronation. But yeah, I feel like they'd have to put a sitter on me, because I'd be trying to pull shit off too. So I'm going to be a nightmare someday.
We say all this though, but once we get in there, we're like, oh, I could lay in bed. I don't have to go around taking care of people. This is the life.
I can just push this button and someone will bring me a glass of ice water and a warm blanket.
I can push this other button and it feels like my whole body's in a hot tub for 5 minutes. You know the button I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, those PCAs, man. Yeah, as a palliative care nurse, we are lousy with PCAs, but they make such a difference in people's comfort levels. Oh my God. for those of you that don't know, a PCA is like, we have a special little machine. It's like a syringe pump. You load in a syringe of some like Dilaudid or some morphine, and then it's connected to the regular IV pump, and they get like a little button. And anytime, within certain parameters, anytime they want to dose a pain medicine, they just go beep, and the machine delivers it. So they don't have to be like, can I get my nurse every 15 fucking minutes? Because some of our patients can have a dose up to every like 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah. For our heart surgery patients, the morphine's every 5 minutes as needed. And then the Dilaudid, I think it's every hour is needed on the Dilaudid, but we don't give that as often, opposed to morphine. But the patient-controlled analgesia, it's very important for the satisfaction. There's actually research that shows that patients with PCA pumps get less opioids throughout their stay in the hospital than if they weren't on the patient, if they weren't controlling it themselves.
And I think having that control also does a lot for them being involved in their own care, because they recognize that they are involved in the timing. They don't feel as powerless waiting for a nurse to show up at the bedside, because when you've got other patients, a Q5 minute push is not realistic. Like, it takes that long to, like, for us on my unit to draw it up and find somebody to waste with you. So it's
I just wasted in the patient.
Yeah. But yeah, it makes a big difference in quality of care, especially when you want to rehab these patients. Like with lung transplant patients, we're getting them up to walk. Like, you're getting out of bed. So if you don't have the proper pain control, you're not going to want to rehab. You're not going to want to use those lungs. You're not going to want to use that heart. And that's the most important thing, as you already know.
Yeah. So, you got to make sure they can breathe.
Let's get back on track. Let's go back to CVICU talk, because this is great. I love this, but I really want to give juicy content to those who are really interested in the CVICU.
I have some juicy patients and
let's hear
juicy
it.
Nurses.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk about that first, because, we make jokes about nurses and different specialties, but give me the lowdown. What is distill down a CVICU nurse? What makes a great CV nurse?
So what makes a great CVICU nurse is just, like I said before, understanding that you know more than all the other nurses. I'm going to get off that. But so how my CVICU nurse is set up is it's 7 CVICU beds on one side of the hallway, and on the other hallway, it's 7 overflow beds. They're overflow ICU beds. And so typically we have between 4 and 7 patients on the CVICU side, and about 1 to 2 patients on the overflow side. Our CCU is 22 beds. So we usually get all the overflow beds from there. So one thing that I guess separates the CVICU nurses from the CCU nurses is the pulmonary artery catheter monitor, like the SVO2 monitors. We're able to see the cardiac output, the cardiac index, the SVO2, SVR, the stroke volume. Like, we're able to see all the numbers very detailed. Our patients have Swan-Ganz catheters in their IJs a lot of the time. So we're able to, that allows us to see all the numbers. We're able to see all kinds of waveforms and stuff. So that's the one thing that intimidates CCU nurses from transferring over to our unit. It's nothing to me, like I said, because I went into it as a new grad. So I was like, this is nursing now. But anytime I go to CCU and I don't have an art line in every patient, I'm like, I can't do these 15-minute blood pressure cuff checks when they're on Levofed.
Yeah, having an art line is great, because that's what it sounds like is really different from the ICUs in in my hospital as well. Although sometimes I do get patients that come out of ICU and they still have those IJs, so we can do some IJ. We take certain cardiac drips. We don't titrate, but we can take
like cardizem and amiodarone.
Yeah, we do amiodarone, but we also sometimes will do cardiac drips with our palliative patients if it's like a symptom control thing. So that's really interesting, because you do have all of these like very invasive lines. That's what freaks me out, is like the first time I went through training, when COVID was when we had the first wave and they trained all of us in ICU, the art lines, the first time I went, they showed me how to do it. And I was like, I got it. This is perfect. I know how to do this. And then I went back like 2 weeks later and I was like, wait, how do I flush this? Right?
Go?
Yeah. So it really is. It's way more complicated than you think. And it's great when you get practice at it and that's your reality and that's your world. But for those of us like floating up from, step down, it's like, oh shit, this is terrifying.
Yeah. And anytime I get pulled to the step down, you know, I'm like, what's wrong with these patients? I could just go home.
They're fine.
They need a hospital bed.
Yeah.
Load them up, shock them, whatever you need to do, send them home.
Sometimes I do feel that way. Sometimes I'm like, why? You know, we hang on to a lot of patients just because we can't find placement. I have a lot of vented patients, and if they need to, you know, if they're stable otherwise, but, you know, they're on a chronic vent, it's like they're new residents. They're just hanging out till we find a facility like 3 hours away that'll take them. So
yeah. I remember in nursing school when we were learning about palliative nurses. It was actually the mental health nurse professor that was showing us this, and showed us a little video on palliative care. And she basically told us that she doesn't really want us going into it straight out of school because it's such like a end of life care. She wants us to focus on saving lives. And she was like, once you're a nurse for a few years, feel free to go into palliative. But she was like, I don't think this is a great place to start out. Did you start out on palliative?
No, but my unit kind of absorbed the palliative care unit partway into my practice. And so that's the hard part, is that I'm still doing the, like, you got to get up, you got to walk, you got to be motivated, you need your nutrition. I still have to be doing like the push of patients that I'm trying to rehab. And then the next room you go in and you're like pushing Ativan and doing oral care on a patient that's like within hours of death. And so we do a lot of that flip-flop back and forth. And that's really difficult. Our new grads have a hard time with like the flipping mood back and forth between like respectful but mournful, you know, managing basically terminal symptoms, but then going into the next room and being like, you can do it. Let's get out of bed. You know, it's But yeah, I agree with you. I think doing that straight out of school, like even doing, if hospice is like your dream and that's like the thing that you've always wanted to do, and then by all means, go for it. But I think that if you want to, especially if you want to be in critical care, you need to be on that mindset of like, we have to act now, we have to make corrective action, we have to figure out what the problem is.
Yeah, you also have to flip it a good bit too, even in critical care, because you get a patient that they're not going to make it. They're on, you know, all the pressors that we have. They're on a new pressor that the doctor thinks might work, that he's done some research on lately. And you just know they're not going to make it. Yeah. And you got to explain to the family member, like, so on my unit, the doc, I don't know why I'm talking like I'm keeping it a secret, like I'm broadcasting it to the world. But sometimes our doctors don't do the best job that they can in explaining the patient status to the patient's family. So you have to do a lot of that. Look, understand it from our point. They're on a lot of drugs. They're on full, you know, assist control on the ventilator. They're probably not going to make it. So we have to do a whole lot of that. And I'm sure that you do too. And that's another thing about nursing that I didn't really think that I was going to get into, is being a patient advocate for ending their suffering, that they don't want to lay in a hospital bed on a ventilator and all these drips anymore. Their arms are weeping. They're developing sores on their back, under their fupa, like they're getting sores. Like, I'm not saying that in our unit.
No, but really, but seriously, like they're incontinent. We're doing Q1 hour blood sugar checks. We're doing, you know, because they're on an insulin drip. We're doing Q1 hour. We're poking them to get blood to check their coagulation levels. Like we're literally like torturing them until the very end. And when you know that the outcome, when you know you can't fix that person, it feels like you're torturing people while the family's going, do everything you can from home. You know,
or the doctors are saying, do everything you can from home.
Yeah, exactly. So it can be really emotionally kind of, I mean, it can be pretty torturous.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? Like, how do you deal with all of that breaking of bad news?
Well, I mean, they obviously see that I'm a young kid. So, I mean, I think that they understand that, I don't know, like you have to be professional with them. And I'm not one to not hug my family. I'll hug the family members if I see that they need it. I saw that you did that video on telling your patient that you love them back. And, you know, I do that.
Still, if I even think about it, I get choked up because it was such a moment.
And I'll tell my patients, you know, love you too. Like, I don't really think that much into it because I understand they're in a hospital bed. They're probably used to being around their family members that they're always telling them that they love.
Are you guys restricting visitors right now at your hospital?
It's one. Yeah. So our visitation, I'm sorry, I should have let you finish.
No, that's fine.
So our visitation used to be 4 hours throughout the day and 2 visitors at a time, but now it's 2 hours throughout the day with 1 visitor at a time. Mm-hmm. On our unit, then on the CCU, in step down, it's 1 visitor from 5:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. And that 1 visitor can swap out throughout the day. So it's almost unrestricted.
Yeah. We're doing, for our non-end of life patients, we're doing 1 visitor for 2 hours every day. And it's like in the afternoon. And then our end of life patients can have 3 visitors in a 24-hour period, but they can't swap out. Like it's 3 visitors. Mm-hmm. And we've made some exceptions, because, for example, people come in and ICU has made an exception for 5 family members, but we make them keep their masks on, ask them not to leave the room unless they really, really need to. But yeah, that makes it hard because ordinarily, when we have patients that are in our step down, sometimes we have, before COVID, we had visitors throughout the day, people bringing
staying all night.
Yeah, we bring cots in because we're really lucky because we're a respiratory floor. We have single rooms. In other places in our hospital, we have double rooms, which I'm not a fan of. I love the single room life. But yeah, so we'll set up a cot for them, give them some blankets. Our CF patients who come and stay with us for weeks at a time. For the kids usually? So we actually take them once they graduate from the children's hospital. And so we see our CF patients. I mean, I've seen CF patients that were maybe late diagnosed and were in their 40s and 50s. Wow. So we are seeing longer life expectancy. A lot of my patients are on Trikafta now. So I haven't seen them at all because they haven't needed to come in for tune-ups. But we sometimes have patients that they bring in their gaming computer and they already know how to hook it up to our TV, or, they bring a mattress topper because they know they hate our beds. It's just, people know what they need when they're in the hospital when they do it chronically. So it's the frequent flyers that you don't look down on. No. And actually I get it, my unit, because we see the same people over and over again, we get really connected to people and their families. We have patient family members who their family member may have died years ago and they still send us letters and food. And, pre-COVID, they'd be like, hey, let's have a brunch. We'll get together. I'll pay for brunch for all the nurses. There's this weird connection that's really great. I don't know if you get to see that because, with ICU, it's usually shorter stay. And we usually have 1 long-termer with us at all times. So the last long-termer that we had was in our unit for 59 days post-op. It was a mitral valve replacement. A lot of times you see in certain populations, the mitral valve replacements, mitral valve repair, they would have gotten repaired, not replaced. You just see them staying in the hospital a long time. They actually ended up transferring over to the CCU and made it a few more weeks before they went. Because at that point, she wasn't cardiovascular post-op. You know what I mean? Even 2 months after, she was a critical care patient at that point. Yeah. And then you have other systems or people's renal status is, bed sores, all this other stuff, all these comorbidities that come just from being in the hospital. You break down. Yeah. I mean, it's just, we push people's bodies really far. And it's just I can't stand being at the hospital more than 12 or 13 hours. What would it be like if I was there for 60 days? As much as our patients are grateful and, love our care that we provide, they don't want to be there. Nobody wants to be there. No. It's just, you see some people have these great outcomes and they leave quickly, and that you need those people that do well to come through once in a while, because I feel like it reminds us why we do this, because when you only see people that aren't doing well, if we have a streak of lung transplant patients that struggle, it really takes a toll on the mood of the nurses. Yeah. And we have to work even harder to perk each other up and support each other. There are still some patients that all we have to do is say that patient's first name and all the nurses are oh, yeah, because it was so hard to provide care when you see people suffering. Yeah. Or we had one that was a long-term with us and they actually got to go home and we're all real happy. And a week later, they're back with us. She actually ended up going palliative after
probably about 6 chest tube insertions over the course of 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's really, so one thing about CVICU nurses that I don't think a lot of people understand, that I think that we get the memes from, is we interact with everyone in the hospital. Like, we interact with the step down nurses, we interact with the CCU nurses. You don't see CCU and step down interacting a whole lot between each other. Mm-hmm. We interact with the palliative care nurses when when the patient does decide to be palliative after a few weeks in the hospital with us. We interact with the ER nurses when we get those critical care overflow beds.
Vascular lab. Yeah, like all of the procedural labs. Mm-hmm. I once saw it during clinicals. I saw an IVC filter placement, and like I was in the cath lab for that, and that was badass. I really enjoyed seeing that.
Vascular surgeons are the most badass. I agree with you. They're able to find every vessel in the body and travel
they're just like putting a wire in, watching it on this giant TV screen. They're like, oh, take a left. What? What are you doing? It was mind blowing to see that. I was just like sitting in the back of the room in my ISO gown, just like shocked at everything I was seeing. So, mad props to the vascular nurses and vascular surgeons. Amazing.
When I was in nursing school, every time I was watching any kind of procedure, all I could think was, don't pass that now. Don't pass that now.
Lean against the wall.
In nursing school, I passed out 3 times. You don't expect that from a CVICU, like someone that's a CVICU nurse now. Like, I've only gotten close to passing out now once, and it was because I got pulled to the nursery and I was helping the pediatrician with circumcisions. And that got me.
I was really lucky that I had a very short maternity rotation in school, and I didn't have to see any circumcisions because I'm not down with that. Yeah,
well, I passed out once in nursing school seeing one, and then I passed out helping with the second one out of 4, but then I came back and it's so hot in the room. That's another thing, because the babies lose heat. Hot in the room. It's a bright light shining down on this crying baby. It's so stressed. It's like it's stressing out. Mm-hmm. And then they clamp the foreskin at the clamps, and then they take the little instrument and go around the head, and then they take the other clamp.
I think we need
awkward silence.
We need a moment of silence here
for all the little babies that get circumcised. Yeah, I mean,
so
it's just a thing.
I've only come close to passing out once, and that was the first time I saw a lumbar puncture, and I was a nursing assistant at the time, and I heard the pop, the soft pop of the needle going through into the intrathecal space. Yeah. And that was the point where I was like, I'm just going to lean up against the wall. I kind of just slid down the wall and sat on the floor. And one of the nurse that was assisting just looked at me and nodded like, yes, just stay right there.
Yeah.
I didn't pass out, but well, it was weird because they had this, and I'm not going to use medical because I work neuro as a nursing assistant like 15 years ago.
I know nothing about
neuro. They had this weird, it almost looked like a flow meter, but it was like, there was like a valve, and like I kind of saw CSF fluid like back up into it,
that's
and like
cerebral spinal transducer.
So that was what I saw, and that was what made me go, oh. But after that, I've been fine. I've seen so much stuff. I've seen like cranies and people rip out tubes. I've seen dehiscences. I've seen abdominal evisceration when a patient ripped off their wound vac. I've seen some stuff, but that was the only thing that I was like, oh no, I can't be witness to this.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to taste it to see if they got meningitis. You know what I mean? Like you got to see if
you put it in a med cup, or do you use a syringe?
I just lick it straight from the needle. Suck it like a crawdad.
You are a CV nurse. Listen to the way you talk.
You kiss your mother with that mouth.
So
I get a little Monica Lewinsky with the lumbar puncture catheter.
Oh my God. I'm so glad I have an explicit rating on this show. Everybody driving on their way to work listening to this just ran off the road.
I was talking to my friends about being on the podcast. My friends that I work with, they're my coworkers, but they're my acquaintances. And
work buddies.
Yeah. I was talking to them about being on the podcast, and I was like, I think I'm going to ask her what her hospital's protocol is for the cum load holy grail. Like, do you guys give like zinc, lysine, arginine, pygium?
I have no idea what those words mean.
Okay.
You've totally lost me. I feel like such a moron.
No, you're not a moron, because this is very non-nursing stuff. So there's a whole community online about maximizing the semen load in individuals. And my cardiovascular surgeon, my cardiothoracic surgeon, takes zinc. And I'm pretty sure it's to increase his load. So nice. We don't want to make fun of him.
I take zinc. I have a bottle of zinc sitting on my shelf, like over here off camera. That's why I take it.
All I'm saying is our Pyxis in the bedroom might be a little low.
Because everybody's taking the zinc.
It's not a controlled substance. It's not a controlled substance. You don't have to count it.
So who knows? So I'm going to have to look up the policy on that.
No, I thought you were going to say I'm going to have to edit this out of the podcast.
No, not at all. This stays in.
CVICU nurses know more, and their cum loads have more volume.
I mean, you've just proven to me that you know more, because I did not know that.
Yeah, it's not even.
How do I follow that up? Here, let me go through my list of questions.
It's the edgelords on the internet. So you asked me how
my camera's not even in focus. You my virgin ears are so fucked up.
You're blurry now.
All right, here I go. Here I am.
It's like Japanese porn from the 90s. It's all blurry. So we're talking about Yu-Gi-Oh.
Control. Yeah, let's talk about Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. It's a card game, based in Egypt.
I've just lost all control.
This is awesome. This is what I wanted. I wanted to go on a podcast and just wreck the flow.
No, this is great. People rarely make me speechless. Usually I have a zinger. So if you've made me speechless, like, you've hit a level of humor that I can't compete with.
You can't handle this amount of, okay, we're not going to talk about that.
Behave. Okay, let's go back to talking about being a nurse in a hospital. How has COVID impacted you guys? Like, are you like a COVID-free unit, or do you see anyone that's had COVID at any point on their journey? Like, what's that like?
Yeah, so we opened up a whole another wing of the hospital. So our hospital is only 2 years old. There was a hospital before, I don't want to say the name of it, but it was 98 years old. They built a new hospital and tore this one down, like Miley Cyrus on the Wrecking Ball. So we had a floor that was empty that we just weren't using. We're planning on using it for critical care beds, but we never got the nurses to take care of them. So we're like, can't. When COVID happened, we ended up opening up that floor. And it's a 14-bed unit. It's an ICU. It started out as just a regular floor because we weren't having that many cases in March and April. But then cases really started to rise in June. So we opened up. We moved all the cardiac patients to the step-down unit. And we ended up using that cardiac wing as a COVID floor, and then using the wing right next to us as the COVID ICU. I was getting pulled there every week, probably one day a week or every other week. And it was fine. COVID impacted us by showing the hospital they need to start hiring some travel nurses. So that's what they did, because they can't have the CVICU nurses floating over there one day and then coming back and taking care of a fresh heart.
No. Mm-mm.
Yeah. So every now and then we might still get pulled over there, but they're pretty staffed now. And our surgeons have been pumping out surgeries. All the other hospitals are going on divergence and they're canceling elective surgeries. We're open for business. You guys are making
bank. Yeah.
We're open.
We kind of are too. Like, I'm like, another lung transplant? Where the fuck? And the weirdest thing that I saw, I've only been a nurse 4 years, so it's not like I've been
2 for me.
In everything. Yeah. So I saw a patient admitted for lungs, went to the OR that morning. Lungs were bad. So sorry, can't transplant yet, which happens sometimes. Yeah. Well, literally the very next morning, they were like, hey, we got another set of lungs for you. And I was like, it's been like 18 hours. What is going on? So those lungs actually were good. But I was like, I've never seen somebody get 2 chances back to back 2 days in a row. So that was just, but yeah, they're pumping them out, I guess is my point, is that we're still getting people through. So
how many lung transplants does your hospital do in a week? Do you know?
So I don't know about weekly, but I know that oh God, I wish I knew. I think we've done, like, I've taken care of patients that, have been coming back for years for like checkups and rejection meds and stuff. And they're like, well, I was number 87 on the list. And, I don't know. But right now, I think we have like 4 or 5 transplant patients on our unit. We have a couple, that aren't doing so well. And then we have some that are just like flying through their recovery. So
they're complicated.
Hey guys, this is Adrianne from the future, and I just wanted to chime in and tell you that my hospital did 25 bilateral lung transplants in 2020. So I didn't know that at the time of this recording, so I just wanted to hop in and clear that up.
Incredibly complicated. No, they're not. And the other thing is with lung transplant, with other organ transplantation, I think the risk of delirium is like maybe in the teens. The risk for delirium in lung transplant patients is like over 40%.
The CO2 buildup?
That, as well as, I'm not sure what else it is, but even if we can keep their CO2 levels, great. We have people that just, anxiety is a massive problem. Like I've never seen anxiety play such a part in recovery.
Is it because their entire lives they can't breathe?
That's a big part of it. Like I think these folks have anxiety issues already. And then depending on, sometimes if they aren't able to extubate quickly enough, these patients end up with tracheostomies. And then we have to wean them from the vent, and the weaning from the vent becomes a source of anxiety. And because of the risk of delirium, and I'm not sure the other pathophys reasons for it, but we are really not giving these patients benzos because it increases the risk of delirium and they react so poorly. So these may be patients that have been taking benzos, they've been taking, Xanax or Ativan for years, and now they're post-surgical and they get none. And so we have they're withdrawing, they've also had, with like anyone in the hospital that's at risk for delirium, we're coming in the room all hours of the night. There's alarms, there's beeping. They need to have blood cultures drawn in the middle of the night. Like there's all these disruptive things. Their sleep patterns are totally fucked. And I'm sure that probably happens less in ICU because you have patients that are intubated and sedated. So they're not really having normal sleep-wake patterns. But our patients, like sometimes they end up delirious and on our floor for a long time just because they're stable. They can, they're weaned from the vent, but their rehabilitation is so slowed by their panic. And that's a huge thing that I don't think people realize with lung transplantation. So being a calm presence in the face of someone who's like, I can't breathe. And they're satting like 99%, so that's the kind of thing that becomes really challenging. That's one of the things that makes me go, maybe I should be an ICU nurse.
I think you do great.
Yeah, I do too, but I'm not an adrenaline junkie. So I don't thrive. Like when there's a code, I'm not like, get the crash cart. I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm the primary. Shoot. So I like being the person that catches things like as the patient, like something's not right. I like hitting that trail. I don't think I would thrive in ICU because I think I'm a timid personality. I think that, I just don't think that doing a code every day is the thing that's going to make my heart sing.
Yeah, I don't know how it is at your hospital, but our hospital, working ICU, isn't really an adrenaline junking thing. I have 2 patients. I'm going to make sure that they swim on to the next shift. Like I'm just going to make sure they coast. Like we do get codes and stuff. I haven't had that many patients code on me. Like usually if their heart starts going in funny rhythms, it's like, oh, let's check the K and mag and let's get on it. Yeah. And I have been on step down, got pulled there, have 5 patients or whatever. And when a patient starts to crash on step down, it's like, oh no, my patient's crashing. I don't have any monitors that I need. I have 4 other patients that I also need to watch out for right now. And also when your patient's crashing on step down, you don't know how long they've been crashing for, like in the same way you would know in the ICU.
Right.
So I think that you would accommodate well in the ICU because you seem very smart. You seem on top of it. You seem like the kind of person that goes in to write down the meds, and you write down every single med that the patients need throughout the night. Do you do that?
I have a very important, I print out my med sheets, but I print them out small. So it's 2 pages per side. And some nurses are like, how do you read that? It's so small. So I print it out like that. And then I use it like a timeline. So as I'm doing things, I'm recording vitals on my med sheet, like a timeline.
Yeah. So you're very organized. I'm sure that you're probably one of the most organized nurses that do that.
Probably.
So in our CCU and our CVICU, we have flow sheets. So do you know anything about flow sheets?
Yeah. We have certain flow sheets. Take, and we don't use the ICU algorithms, but we do insulin drips. We do heparin drips.
You guys take insulin drips?
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Because, oh man, sometimes sometimes we see crazy, constantly titrating the freaking insulin drip.
Yeah. Well, when they're on 20 units of insulin and you check their blood sugar and it's 45, oh crap.
Yeah.
So we have a new CNO that started this past summer, and she was shocked that her step down doesn't take DKs and they don't take insulin drips.
Yeah.
Because they take up a CCU bed.
Yeah. And we take on my unit, we ideally like to be at 3 patients per nurse, but we will take up to 4. The reason that we as intermediate, the reason we max out at 3 to 4 is because you can potentially have 3 to 4 patients that are vented. And we have 24-hour respiratory therapists on the unit, but we're a 24-bed unit. And so, if you've got the west side of the unit and they've got, 6 or 8 vents, you don't want to have 4 patients.
Yeah.
Because just, the amount of cares and the amount of suctioning people need. And, we get 2 respiratory therapists and they're great, but they have treatments to do on everybody. So the nurses really need to step up and make sure that we're doing suctioning, we're troubleshooting vent alarms, we're paying attention, to bags running dry because we do a high flow nasal cannula as well, like high flow humidified oxygen. That's kind of the step we take before we're, going back to CCU and intubating.
Do you keep them on continuous monitors?
Yeah, we have a lot of patients on continuous monitors, which is great, but it's also a nuisance because then we have the patients that are non-compliant with BiPAP, and all they're there for is BiPAP titration. And so they just dip to 86, 87, and then they themselves awake and then they start breathing again. So it's you have a lot of nuisance alarms for patients that just don't want to do what they're supposed to. It's you'd be satting fine if you put on your fucking BiPAP.
Yeah.
But we end up with a lot of ringing at night. So if I walk onto the unit and I don't hear a cacophony of bells, I'm like, oh, good. Maybe tonight won't start out shitty.
Yeah.
But there are some nights you come in and it's oh my God, what is happening?
So chaotic.
What is everybody? Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like you guys have an actual step down unit. Our step down unit is a floor unit that the heart surgical patients just go to after they have heart surgery. And the doctors have high expectations that the nurses aren't able to fulfill because they have 5 patients.
Yeah,
you can't walk a patient down the hallway when you have 5.
No, especially when you're walking a patient that's trached. They have 3 chest tubes. All the chest tubes are to suction. You need somebody to push a wheelchair behind them in case they max out. It takes 4 people to walk with 1 patient. So it's when you have 5 people to do this with, there's not enough hours in the day.
Yeah, it's 24 patients that don't have eyes on them right now.
Yeah, so it's a really, really delicate balance. And the other thing is we're not set up like an ICU. So we have rooms that are at the end of the hall that you can't really see in the room, and then we have our prime, rooms right by the nurse's station where we can see the patients. And those rooms are usually for the patients that are major fall risks. They're delirious, they're confused, they're combative, whatever. They go there because then we got eyes on them. I became a traffic controller for a second there.
I thought you were doing the deer thing.
Yeah. But yeah, so A lot of difference. I think I could survive in ICU. I just don't know that I would love it. And when I talk to ICU nurses, there's like this passion for it. Like when I trained in the surgical ICU, we have med ICU, surgical ICU, CVICU. We've got our PICU, NICU. Like we've got.
Yeah, you got a way bigger hospital than I have.
Yeah. And we also have like our ICUs because of COVID have overflowed. They've created negative pressure rooms on like the cardiac ICU step down in PACU. Like we've had to rearrange everything to accommodate because Iowa, as you may have heard, is doing a really shitty job at controlling this.
You ever heard of Alabama?
Yeah.
That's where I live.
All right. Iowa and Alabama are basically the same fucking state when it comes to leadership. So, yeah, I feel ya. We, I think, maxed out somewhere in the 90s. Like at one time had 90 COVID patients in our hospital.
That's a lot.
I'm not sure what our current number is.
I wonder what the ICU patients were, because, you know, it's very easy for someone to have COVID and 103 temperature, it's adding 90, send them home. So I know our COVID ICU has been full since June. Yeah.
And we, you know, I read through my patient, like their, you know, hospital trajectories, and it's like proned, supinated, like over the course of weeks. And it's like, there was one guy, they were ready to trach him and he self-extubated the day before they were going to trach him, and he was satting fine. So they're like, you fucking saved yourself from getting a trach and way more time in the hospital. So.
Oh, did he live?
He lived.
Oh.
He lived. He was satting fine. They were like, dude, you are one lucky son of a bitch, because that could have gone a totally different way.
Wow. I'm surprised he lived.
I am too, but yeah.
So I haven't talked to the pulmonologist since October, but as of October, all the patients that we had in the COVID ICU that were ventilated between March and October, we only had 8 to 10 actually leave the hospital. And I think 6 of those had trachs. And there were just like no quality of life. You know, they're laying in the bed long term from there on out. Yeah,
we've had a lot of patients that, you know, have come out with like kidney injuries. And so their kidney injury is so bad, they're now on dialysis. We've had other patients that have come out, they've had like bowel perforations throughout the course of their stay. So they now have ostomies, patients that are trached, patients that are still having ongoing cardiac issues. There are nurses that I work with that are having ongoing cardiac issues after never had cardiac issues before, got COVID. Now they have weird cardiac shit going on. So we don't have any.
Your likelihood of stroking is huge because all the microclots that COVID causes.
Yeah. So pretty terrifying. I've been on strict quarantine since March. Like some people think I'm crazy, but I'm like, I live in a state where everybody's getting sick and people are tailgating down the street. Like,
Yeah. You know, got to play football.
Yeah. You're not even go to the football game because they're not allowing any spectators. It's just people that are like listening to the game and like playing tippy cup and shit in their front yard. So kudos to the youth of Iowa for not listening. Anyway, that's there.
Back in March when COVID started picking up and New York was hit really bad, we had 3 nurses all leave to go travel in New York with Crucial because they were working 21 days in a row, got all out, got like, I don't know what it was. It's crazy money, $1,000 a day or whatever. They weren't allowed to come back to our hospital.
Wow.
Because they left with no notice at a time when we were very low census. Our CVICU was shut down. We were all going over to CCU, and even CCU would only have 16 out of their 22 beds full. So we weren't even needing these nurses that went to New York. Then they didn't have their jobs back. It was a huge issue. I tried to go to New York, but there were so many retired RNs trying to go. They were like non-ICU RNs that were trying to go. Made me so mad because I'm like, I'm a CVICU nurse. I should get priority. I get priority and special treatment in the hospital.
I already know how to do this. Yeah. We actually, my hospital, I'm doing an interview like in an hour from now with a woman that I used to work with, that she went to work in a clinic and they bumped her from the clinic to the COVID ICU. So I'm going to talk to her about that experience. But I got really lucky. They've been talking about my unit becoming part of the, like I said, I was ICU trained in case we needed to surge. But I think they're also trying to like prevent us from having to do that because we do take immunocompromised patients. And so we do kind of want to remain a clean unit, even though we have had a few patients come up positive over the course of this like whole year. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. I might end up an ICU nurse unwillingly if COVID doesn't, get under control.
I think it will in the next 6 months once the vaccine gets mass produced.
I'll feel a lot better just a few weeks after the holidays are over. And also that's a good question. I do want to kind of wrap this up, but let's talk about the vaccine before I let you go. Where you stand? If I said to you right now, hey, I got this vaccine for you. You want to roll up your sleeve? Are you taking it? Or are you not taking it? And why?
So I guess right now it would depend on if our high risk patients also had the vaccine available to them. Like I wouldn't want to take an 80-year-old grandma's vaccine, but if they all got vaccinated, I would for sure take the vaccine. And I'm not even scared of getting like side effects from the vaccine because it's not even inactivated virus. It's just messenger RNA from COVID. Are there going to be long-term side effects? Maybe, but it goes that way with every vaccine. I heard that some of the chickenpox vaccines made people artistic. I think they were talking about that at a that was a bad joke. But I would love to draw. I think I'd like to be more creative. But,
I've been very creative since I caught the chickenpox. It wasn't even the vaccine. The chickenpox themselves. I was connecting the dot, connecting the chickenpox.
Yeah, so you got more artistic.
I did. I got way more artistic.
I'm not an anti-vaxxer.
Neither am I.
Now, do I believe that the government should make it mandatory to where people should be imprisoned if they don't take the vaccine? No, because that's big government. But do I think that the normal person should take it? Yes. Just like I don't think the government should make McDonald's against the law because it's bad for you. Like, we should all get the freedom that we deserve as human beings to do whatever we want.
I agree. Bodily autonomy is important. The thing that I wish, I think the argument between I think the reason that we have to even question whether these things should be mandatory is because we have so many people that it's not even that they have good reason. Some people have said, oh, well, I have this and that reason. Some of the reasons just aren't scientifically sound. People are like, well, it's too fast. Okay, well, tell me what normally happens throughout the course of a medical trial. Why are those so long? This is the speed shit should move at because we have the funding, the participants, the government backing, the fucking companies that all want to work on this. There's so much downtime in regular studies. Like I've been a part of studies before and they call me back like once every 6 to 12 months. And it's like, well, there's so much downtime that when people just say, well, it's too fast. I'm like, okay, but why do you think it's that fast? Have you read any studies? Have you educated yourself? Do you know how to read a study? And I'm not trying to be like, yeah, that's cool. But you know what? The government also mandates seatbelts and the FDA, while I don't trust them fully, we used to have bread with glass in it. There are things that the government has done right. If you want to argue that, then we could also argue, but it's not 100% guaranteed. Yeah, neither are seatbelts, neither are condoms, neither are airbags. We use all of these things. It's about risk mitigation, not just risk elimination. And so I'm kind of like, well, you got to choose one or the other. If you don't want the vaccine, then you need to continue to mask and distance. If you don't want to mask and distance, then please consider getting the fucking vaccine. You know what I mean? It's like,
I agree with you.
You can't have it all ways. And I think that with freedom also comes the responsibility of good citizenship. Yeah, I can do whatever the fuck I want. I can go out and spray paint the side of your house if I feel like it. But does that make me a good neighbor? Does that make me a community, what am I trying to say? Does that make me a member of a community? Am I a part of something that's helping us survive longer and better? So to me, it's you can do whatever you want, but then I can think whatever I want about you. And what I think is you don't give a shit about the people around you. If you're not going to mask, not going to distance, not going to take this seriously,
Yeah. And they're worried about,
I'm angry.
It's fine. I mean, but you have people that are afraid of the side effects from a vaccine that smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol and eat McDonald's.
And eat processed food.
Yeah.
And, vape.
And I'm not shaming on anyone. Like I drink.
No, you can do what you want.
Yeah.
But if you're going to claim that that's the reason you don't want it, well, then you need to reevaluate if that's...
They're sedentary. They probably haven't worked out since the 80s.
Yeah. There are risks with everything, including, me sitting on my ass watching Sex and the City all day. So, I mean, I don't know why that TV show popped into my head. Yeah. That's just what came up. But it's
not like the government saying, now you got to go out and run 2 miles because we're seeing that benefits longevity. You know what I mean?
Right. Like, I think people should have the freedom, but I also wish people wouldn't be complete assholes about it. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like the only non-transparency that we've seen with the whole vaccine was that we didn't know that we had a successful vaccine until after the election. Everything else that we've seen about like from the vaccines has been very transparent. Other than that, their choice to release information was, political.
And the other thing, people have said to me, well, why are we suddenly trusting big pharma now? And it's like, well, here's the thing. If you trust absolutely nothing, you can at least trust this. They want the credit. They want the money. So if nothing else, Pfizer, whatever other companies are out there developing these drugs, think about what it would be like if they had the most effective COVID vaccine. How does that benefit them? That does benefit them because they get to sell it. They get stock, their company profits, they get name recognition. So on one hand, I'm like, yeah, I don't trust big pharma 100% either. I want to do my research. I want to read about what they're doing. But at the same time, it's like they do have good incentive to do a good job here. So
another argument that I saw was the CEO of Pfizer backed out of their stock the day that they released information on the vaccine. And it's like, why did he do that? But a lot of CEOs, when they have stock in their company, it's illegal for them to choose when they're going to take it out. So they either have to set a date that they're going to take it out before, like 6 months beforehand, or they have to, once it reaches a certain number, like once a stock is a certain value, then it automatically takes it out. So of course, the day that the vaccine got released, their stock went up a ton, and then it reached the automatic number for the CEO to pull out.
For him to pull out,
for it to automatically pull out for him. So that's just another argument that I've seen that is, countered. Bam, boom, done.
Well, anyway, I will be first in line when it is available to me. I get my flu vaccine every year. I'm one of those lucky people that not only have I not had any side effects from it, but I don't usually get sick. So, whether that be good hand hygiene, distancing, staying away from people that are sick as shit. All of those things are things that I do, but also I get my vaccine first available every year. When the hospital's like, we're going to start on Monday, I'm there on Monday. So I
didn't get it this year because we have to wear masks anyway. And that was my rationale. I'm not scared of the flu.
I get that.
It's not COVID.
No, for sure. But I'm also one of those people that I'm like, well, if I could choose extra protection to not even if the flu is, I'm relatively young, I'm relatively healthy. The flu is not likely to take me out, but the flu sucks. I don't want the flu. I don't want my days off taken away from me. And I don't want to call in sick because I got the shits. So I would rather just do everything in my power. I'm like a zero. I'm like one of those people that's like, if I don't have to take the risk, I'm not going to. You will not catch me jumping out of any airplanes.
I think that might be one reason you haven't started working in the ICU yet.
Probably. Maybe if I just bite the bullet and go skydiving, I'll be like, I'm ready for ICU. Anyway. Yeah, it's been really awesome talking to you. I think.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, not only have you made me speechless, you've given me a lot of really great information. And this was like one of the first interviews that I've done where I didn't ask you shit about yourself before you came on. So you could have been a complete nightmare. And I could
have not even been a nurse.
I mean, that's still kind of possible. I haven't looked you up. I haven't checked you on the database or anything.
Yeah. I just walk in the hospital and use meds and go home.
There is a lot that we've covered, and I'm super excited that I got to talk to you. So thanks for being such a great guest. And
thank you.
Yeah. I
hope that I was good on my first podcast ever.
It was great. You can tell your friends that you got an A+ rating from a hobbyist podcaster.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have any social media or anything you want to share with people, or are you on lockdown?
Nah, I tried playing some Fortnite and Rocket League and trying streaming it, but I think I had better odds going to CRNA school.
That's cool. Yeah. So go to the blog, nursinguncensored.com/blog. It's in there. It's like been one of the last, within the last 10. I'll put the link in the show.
With the CRNA school lady?
Yeah. Jenny Finnell. She also has the CRNA Prep Academy group on Facebook, and that's a constant stream of Q&A, people answering questions and talking about best strategies, even preparing in the years up to, like you talked about, you've been working on all these certifications. That's awesome. So kudos.
Florence Nightingale said that if you're not moving forward in your nursing career, then you're moving backwards, or something like that. I have the exact quote in a book somewhere.
Florence said, "Go to grad school." That's a quote. That's a direct quote. I read it.
Is it? She didn't believe in germs.
No, she didn't. Can you believe she was pick those boys up off the floor and wash your fucking hands?
She would not have taken the COVID vaccine.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know. I think
maybe it's proper education.
I think she would have read the studies. I think she would have Googled the studies if she was a modern day Florence. Yep. I think she would have looked it up. Anyway, thank you, Blake, for being such an awesome
great
guest.
Being on. Yeah, thanks for being a great host and not making me uncomfortable.
Awesome. I'm glad you weren't. People get so nervous and then they talk to me and they're like, "You're not worth being scared of." All right, cool.
All right, bye.
Happy nursing.
See ya. Happy nursing.
Here at Nursing Uncensored, we may be, uncensored, but we're not unfiltered. Protected health information has been changed and concealed to comply with HIPAA. The things we talk about are from years of experience with thousands of patients, things we've read, stories we've heard. If you think we're talking about you, we're definitely not. Also, we're real nurses here to provide helpful and accurate information, but don't take anything we say as fact without doing your own research. Refer to your state's Board of Nursing, Practice Acts, and your institution's policies and procedures if you have questions about your practice. Lastly, our very strong opinions are ours alone and do not reflect those of our employers, educational, or professional institutions. Thanks for listening, and happy nursing, folks.